Welcome to Spark Starter, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Godey, and I'm here to fan the flames of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you the inspiring stories of female entrepreneurs from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. Today, my guest is stirring up success in the culinary world. Tricia Clark, affectionately known as the Kitchen Witch, is the founder of Tricia's Bites of Life, a unique service-based business that's transforming mealtime for busy women entrepreneurs and working moms. Tricia is a self-taught culinary expert who combines her love of cooking with the elements of human design and a touch of what she calls the woo to create personalized, practical mealtime solutions. Her approach goes far beyond traditional cooking. Tricia empowers her clients to create nourishing environments and routines that reflect their current energies and lifestyle needs. Tricia enjoys teaching others how to shift their intention and energy of meal planning, cooking, and entertaining that can lead to magical outcomes and improved connections. But there's more to Tricia than just her culinary prowess. She's a recent empty nester who's been embracing this new chapter of her life with enthusiasm. She is a testament to the power of following your passion and thinking outside of the box so you can turn your ideas into a thriving business. Welcome, Tricia. I'm so excited to have you joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love the premise of your podcast and the message that you're spreading. I feel like we all get to a point where like there has to be more than this. What's it going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting too is that we all take sort of our unique journey to get here. And one of the things that I loved the most when you submitted your information to me was sort of how you really were drawing on things from even your childhood of sort of this loving to create and loving to make more culinary things. So can you talk a little bit about like where you were before you decided to start Tricia's Bites of Life?
Yeah, I have been working in corporate America, still do for 30 years, probably. We're pushing 30 years. And it's been a great career. It's provided well for my family. But as a younger mom, I discovered that I loved cooking and that I had a knack for making it simple. And where I was is I was selling Pampered Chef, and because I was like, okay, this will be a fun way to share my love of cooking. And it really got to the point I was meeting the same women over and over, and they would buy a new gadget or I would teach a new recipe. But when I would see them again, nothing had changed in how they were bringing things to life. They were still stressed about the same things. And I thought, gosh, we have so many resources out here, from meal plans to subscription boxes to great tools and gadgets, but nobody's really talking about how do we pull it all together so that it's less stressful, so that we can actually show up ready to connect with our people. It's just another task on the list. And I thought, man, mealtime has brought so much to my family. How can I create something that brings all those pieces together? Because they're all valuable resources, but they all do all intertwine. And I
Yeah,
find that we latch onto one as the solution and we're like, wait, something's still missing.
yes. It's what I love about most, I mean, I would say like over 99% of women that start businesses, they really do start them out of sort of two pieces. It's sort of that cross section of, what fills my heart, right? Like what's that thing that I absolutely love that makes my heart sing? And the other piece is where's the gap? Right? Like where is that place that I can't fulfill for myself or I see other people struggling with. So I love that you've really wrapped up all these things, and I love to cook as well. So I absolutely love everything that you're doing here.
Yeah, you mentioned the childhood part of it, and I didn't really touch on the love of it. Like, I remember as a child always wanting to play mad scientist and mix things together and create. But on the flip side of that, I don't remember family mealtime. I don't remember those moments of connection. And so for me, I think it all came together in this desire to build something different in my own family, and saw that come to fruition over time, combined with then this reinvigorated love of mixing things together. Because when I moved out of the house, I didn't know how to cook. And so I had to teach myself. And through that, I found that I love to cook and I love to feed others and create those moments that I realized I missed out on. I guess would be another facet of it that I think is important.
It's I remember, I mean, mealtime is such an important time for the family. It's sort of like that time when you get to catch up on, what everybody's been doing during the day. It's like a time to give update of successes and things that maybe aren't as successful. And I think it's like a good time to get a read. And so to think about you having a childhood where you didn't remember those sort of moments is what do you attribute that to? Was it just sort of based on scheduling of like parents or what?
It was, I'm the youngest of 4 by several years.
Okay.
And so I would say that, and then to add to that, my stepdad was retired, so significantly older than my mother. And so I think that in a way, for lack of better terms, and I was well provided for, I was loved, let's be clear. But I feel like in a way they were kind of done, right? They'd kind of already done all that. And he had 6 kids and my mom had 4. And so they were really just enjoying their time together. And I think my mom was just like, she'll figure it out. Like, she's fed, but I wouldn't eat anything that wasn't in a can, a box, or frozen. Like, I was awful. And I realize now she was an amazing cook. Like, it wasn't that she didn't cook, but she never she didn't push me to eat it or do those things, right? She was like, she'll figure it out. I've made sure that she's fed. And I don't know that she really grew up with it either. And so we just we do what we learn and what we watch. And so it was not intentional by any stretch. I just think it's the way things landed. But there are things that I occurred when I had kids that I wasn't making that a focus. And I tried so hard and went the other direction of like, we're going to eat together. And but in that, I made it another task, right? And I would sit down at the table and wonder, like, why doesn't anybody want to tell me about their day? Like, why doesn't anybody appreciate me? Why the hell do I even do this? Why do I try? Like, and one day I was like, oh my gosh, guess what, Trish? You're the problem. Or a big chunk of the problem, right? Because I was bringing all that to the table and wanting to know why they didn't want to interact with me. And I'm like, oh, if I can change what that looks like, maybe I can create those moments that I don't remember. And we did.
Well, when you think about the end of the day, right? The human brain, I can't remember the number offhand, but the human brain's only capable of making so many decisions during the day as well. So you have this cross section of dinner. So you've got either, the fact that you could certainly be in your situation where it's sort of like another task on the to-do list for, everyone feels like it's a task rather than an enjoyable time to come together. But there's also that stress of what are we going to have for dinner? Like
Yes.
what, and to be honest with you, it's one of the most stressful questions of the day. And I'm Sicilian by background, so I start asking what's for dinner at, like when I wake up. So that way it can be a very stressful all day decision. But you've really within Tricia's Bites of Life, you've really tried to sort of simplify and make a plan and a path that really makes it easy for everyone. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of the philosophy behind Tricia's Bites of Life and what you actually do with that?
Yeah. I mean, the philosophy is really, there is no one size fits all. There is no one solution. Like, it's about finding what works for you and your family and your schedule. And sometimes we just need guidance in what are the things that we need to experiment with to find those processes. I'm going to use a couple of really simple examples of, some people love to batch cook and have everything ready for the week ahead of time. Some people do not. I am one of them. I will batch cook with you. I will do freezer meals, but to eat that same thing throughout the week drives me absolutely bananas. But it works really well for some people, right? And so to think I'm going to batch prep and then you do it. And then you're like, oh, well, that didn't work. And I wasted all that money. And I did all that cooking and it still didn't work. It's because
Mhm.
we're trying other people's scenarios and we go all in, right? So the philosophy is to really baby step it and experiment, right? Go back to a little bit of that mad scientist and not just with the food, but experimenting with different thought processes and really thinking about what's the intention that we're taking into when I sit down to meal plan. Is it, oh my gosh, I don't know what to cook? Or is it, can we shift it to, I have an opportunity to connect and feed with my family? And just that thought process changes the way you show up. It can be a simple thought. And then, are you one who wants to cook 6 nights a week? Do you want to cook 2 nights a week? What works for you? Where do you need help in the process? Because I have news for you. It is not all on us.
Yeah.
It is not. And so it's figuring out those things. And that's really what I do is help you figure out those things. And I've created memberships and tools along the way that take that decision fatigue out, right? You and I have talked some about AI, but I have this chat bot that is literally, you can tell her, I have pasta, chicken, and tomatoes in my kitchen. What can I make with that in 20 minutes? And she'll tell you. There's no more like, I love Pinterest, but you don't have to comb through all the resources to answer the question. And I think that's so much of what we get caught up in. Originally, I was like, I'm going to really try to work with people that don't like to cook. And what I discovered is even people who said they didn't like to cook didn't actually mind the act of cooking. You're right. It was the decision. It was what to cook. It was one more decision in the day. So I was like, I got to figure out that piece or one solution to that piece so that we can move on to the next and start, okay, we've made the decision. Now what's coming up? Now what's left? And just keep going down the path.
Well, and I mean, I'm so glad you brought up this whole concept, right? It's also like, how fast can I do it? What ingredients do I have? But I think there's also one other lever that you and I have talked about separately, which is this idea of also all the I've noticed in the world that we have more and more food sensitivities, more and more allergies to food, and you also sort of allow them to pull that other lever too, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because, yes, you can go find meal plans that are gluten-free and dairy-free. You can go find an anti-inflammatory diet. The truth is, every single body is different. And what is inflammatory to me could be very not inflammatory to you, right?
Mhm.
So being able to bring that personalization of what can I make for dinner in 15 minutes that accommodates all these dietary restrictions? And can you give me a whole meal plan and a grocery list for that? Is not just a time saver, like, forget the time, it's a stress saver, you know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about being able to come together, I mean, there's also pieces that, you don't have to be the only one that cooks, right?
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, just because that role is typically given to us. I mean, there's certainly us being women, let me be clear about that. But there is certainly opportunities for dividing up tasks, right? I mean, and almost anybody, depending upon the age of your children, but like anybody can chop vegetables and sort of prep things.
Yes.
And you have sort of these ways that also I think mealtime becomes a little bit more about the community aspect, which I know with the entertaining piece, of your philosophy really wraps into that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, for me, I came into this wanting to make mealtime easier with really the point of view that I wanna make it less about the food and more about the connectivity piece. And so if we can let's talk about kids for a second. Kids are exponentially more likely to try new foods that they're a part of preparing. And you can bring 3-year-olds as young as 3 or even younger into the kitchen. You just have to be very careful about the tasks that you give them. Like, it could be as simple as, can you help me get these vegetables out of the fridge? And it gives you an opportunity to teach them about what they are. They can break off leaves, right, without ever having to manage a knife. Like, and then they can go on about their way. It doesn't have to be we don't have to make it a big affair to bring them in, and they will be more likely to try their foods. And they felt welcome in a space that is the hub of the home. Like, I think all that is incredibly important. I'm going to
Yeah.
flip to spouses for a moment because I know from my busy schedule of working a full-time job, raising 2 kids, starting a business, there are nights I just don't have it. And
Mhm.
I love to cook and meal plan, but there are still nights I just don't have it. And so I keep things around in the freezer or freezer meals that I've prepped ahead, or I've intentionally put something on the menu that I know my husband is comfortable cooking, and he can cook. But I've heard from a lot of women that their husbands wouldn't know their way around. I guarantee you they can get a Stouffer's lasagna out of the freezer and put it in the oven. So leave yourself one night where you're putting yourself first, at least one night, and say, you know what, tonight's my night off. One of you do it, or all three of you do it together. There's so many different ways to tackle that it's not just about saying, I'm not doing it, right? You can have a plan that sets everybody up for success without having a complicated meal plan. Let's be clear. A meal plan is just a plan.
I'm so glad you touched on that piece of like giving ourselves the gift of easy, right? Or gift of being able to delegate to somebody else. I think that we sometimes feel like we're letting, I think women can sometimes feel like they're letting people down if they're not sort of doing it to the perfect 5-star, Michelin starred status every day. So Tricia, we touched on it, throughout this, about this idea of starting this business and really getting into it. What would you say, especially because of the fact that you're bridging this gap between sort of this corporate life and your own business? And what would you say, having that unique perspective of sort of like having a foot in two places, what would you say has been like the biggest benefit, like the thing that you've loved the most about having your own business?
Gosh, so many things, but I think that the thing that immediately comes to mind is this discovery of who I am outside of that corporate world, because I feel like as women, we get so ingrained in that, not to say that I don't enjoy process, but that very like, I'm almost going to say like time clock, super structured masculine energy, and discovering how to bring the feminine and kind of rediscovering that side of myself. And I don't mean like pink and lace, but just being able to discover that I remind myself that I can do things where I just go with the flow, right? And it doesn't, I think that's been one of the biggest things that I've really learned about myself, and that I've really enjoyed is really discovering that balance, and feel like I'm creating something bigger than me that is my own, and not fulfilling somebody else's dreams, if you will.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. And I think that that's really, I love that one word of discovery. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It has been a crazy path of discovery. What I was not prepared for was the level of vulnerability required.
yeah. It's
That
that's
was
a
a shocker.
yeah, tell me more about that.
I've always considered myself a chatterbox, an open book. I can talk to a stump. Like, that's never been an issue, right? And I feel like I'm very open about my feelings, and I love deep conversations. But there's something really incredibly vulnerable, I think you don't realize, in putting your own thing out in the world. So much easier to talk about somebody else's thing because your heart's not at stake,
Mm,
right? I mean, it's just occurring to me now, it's a little bit like falling in love and dating all over again, right? Because you're really putting your faith, it's scary almost to put your faith in yourself versus somebody else, I think, or at least that's how it felt to me, was when I'd create these things and I was all ready to put them out there, and I was like, oh, and then I would go back in my hole and it's just not ready yet, right? Like, it took me a long time to embrace doing it messy and just getting out there and doing it, because I was probably scared of being judged. There's always imposter syndrome, comparisonitis, all of that, right? You're watching all these people out here on this online world where it's really noisy and it can be really intimidating. And so I think that was the hardest part for me, and just discovering and have to remember that I'm bringing something different to the world for a reason, and I'm the only one qualified to do it.
right.
So how do we continue to do it scared?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. That's a perspective. I think the way that you phrased it is so much more clear, even though some of my other guests have sort of talked about it a little bit. But I do think that there is a lot of that comparison, right? Like, am I as successful as this other person? And I would sort of just for each of our listeners today, I would say that it's a little dangerous to do that because not everyone puts their completely authentic true self forward. So I think it's also sometimes hard as well to know like who's really authentically having those successes. And is it someone that I can, look to them as like a form of mentorship and be able to sort of garner and help use that success to help motivate and encourage me and give me the skills that I need? Or is it really just sort of like a little bit that green monster, which is that jealous part that says, oh my gosh, like I'm a failure because I'm not as successful as this other person. And
Right.
I
It's
think
really
that
addressing why you're feeling that way. It's not even about the other person you're comparing yourself to, honestly. It just brings up
exactly.
so much that's hidden that you've stuffed down for so long. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, when we start our businesses, there's like the easy part, right? Like I love this thing and I didn't love this thing. What do you think has really been like the biggest sort of surprise? I know you sort of mentioned this idea of this, comparison and the need for vulnerability, but has there been anything else that's really been a surprise for you?
I think I think the amount of trial and error, even for myself, to discover what was authentic, because you jump into this and you're listening to all the experts, and there's some amazing experts, but there's so many shoulds and coulds and processes. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in that and trying it all that you don't realize you're not coming across as authentic because you're so busy worrying about all the things and the check boxes you're supposed to be checking. And you almost don't even realize that maybe you're not being authentic until I had somebody, and I still find myself going through it as I change strategy or try something new, right? Because I'm much better in this atmosphere than like a written post. And so when somebody says, yeah, I just feel like your content is hitting flat. And I'm like, wow, like, because it's so important to me. But again, I can go back to the energy I'm putting into it is this energy and this focus of I need to do this versus I want to do this and I want to show up in this way. And I think for me, that's really where human design started coming in, is learning more about that and leaning into how I'm designed. And that isn't necessarily like every other business coach out there. And so there's been so many surprises along the way. And to me, they kind of all connect together, which is probably why I sound like I'm all over the place.
No, not at all. And I'm sorry, somebody actually said to you that your content was falling flat?
Yeah, and they're a
Or
good friend, and it's okay.
okay,
Like, I
okay.
understood, like, she explained where she was coming from, and she was like, "You don't have a flat personality, like, I talk to you all the time." And so, there was a disconnect between how I can verbalize it much different, right, than I can write it down, but when I looked back at it, I was checking a box of, "Here's how you get engagement in this group," right? Like, she was not wrong, like, she knows me. But it took that step back again, and this was just recent for me to go, "You're right. I was not in the space of this is what I love. I was in the space of fishing." If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yes, it does. It does. And thank you for making that clarification
Yeah.
because in the online space, there are strangers that are very happy to give feedback that isn't always helpful
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a
No,
way
this
that
was from somebody I definitely trust and admire and who I speak to all the time. And so for her to say it, I was like, okay, it's not some rando on YouTube leaving a comment. I did get one of those recently too on a YouTube video. That was fun. The comment was awkward. And I was like, what? Kick rocks. If you thought it was awkward, you could have at least given me some constructive criticism on how to make it
right,
better if you're gonna show up
right.
that way.
Or like specifically what was awkward, the whole
Exactly.
thing or like
Exactly.
just one
Yeah.
phrase? Like,
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
open to feedback,
yeah, yeah.
you
I
know? We're all
gotta
figuring
love
it out
the
along the way and where our message comes across the best. So, like, help a sister out.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I know that you are self-funded,
Mhm.
which is very, very common. I would say, 98% of the women on this show so far have been self-funded. And, when we think about starting a business, sometimes I think, if you have never started a business, you think that, especially in this online space, and, if you're mainly in social and those types of things, you could easily think that it's free to start a business.
Yeah.
And it's not, right? I mean, even if you think that you can just use social media, it's not even free. So do you have any insights that you would share for women who are looking to start their business from that perspective?
I
Is there
do. I do because I invested thousands way earlier than I need to and continued to for a long period of time trying again to chase like I should have all these things in place before I can do anything. Part of that was me feeling not ready, to be
Mm,
honest. And like if I have
mhm.
this one more thing, then I'll be ready. But part of it, the biggest piece of advice I would say is to don't get distracted by all the shiny objects and the coaches and the messaging out there and really start with someone who can help you set up the foundations of a business and start there first. Invest there first, not in your dream coach that will come, but in somebody, even if it's a course. I have a friend who does a great course called Launched, and she just steps you through step by step, like set. I mean, and I'm getting really tactical here, but setting up your business bank account. Where do you track it? Like, what is your message? Like, there's so much more beyond who is your ideal client and what are you trying to sell. And I feel like so many start there. And yes, you need to know what you want to bring into the world, but there's a whole lot more to it before you throw it out there that once you're doing all the things, it's really hard to play catch up and figure out where you are in that realm of things.
And I would also, to add on to that, I would also say that, most people don't have infinite funds.
Right.
And it can sometimes mean the difference between being able to actually launch your business or not be able to launch your business if you don't, if you've spent funds in a place that's not going to be as productive in actually being able to have a business,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't know who your ideal client is. I'm not saying don't start posting about it on social media or building your email list. I'm just saying make sure that you're really setting those business foundations in place of the business part of it, and it's not the fun part of it. Um,
It's not the fun part, but it's the
but it's
part that
so
keeps
easy
you
to
from
rack
being.
up enormous credit card debt trying to do all the things and grow. It's just so easy. And then if you're not making the money, you're stressed about how to pay them off. And then you show up differently. You show up in energy of panic instead of joy.
Yeah, and I would also say that there's sort of like the legal side too, which
Mhm.
is, understanding the financials enough to know when you need to pay taxes.
Yeah.
It's understanding what you need to do to protect your personal assets. I mean,
Mhm.
there are some of those things too, depending upon what kind of business you have, to what your risk level is of being sued, those types of things.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um,
And so all those foundations I think are critical. And I think out here we can easily forget about them or miss a few along the way. And it's just if I had to do things differently, I would spend more time there instead of in the dream state of I'm just going to bring this to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a balance there, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate this conversation because this isn't sort of the direction that a lot of times people, are willing to sort of talk about. So thank you very much for sharing
Yeah,
that, Tricia. I
absolutely.
really appreciate it.
It's scary.
It is scary. It is scary, especially if we didn't come from entrepreneurial families or families that actually had their own business, right? There's sort of like that unknown. You just don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what
And
you don't know. And those limiting beliefs about money and all the stuff that again, all that stuff that comes up. Oh man.
yeah, absolutely. So you do fun things too, right? It's not all work.
No.
And I love the fact that you do puzzles. My sister loves to do puzzles, and I recently started one with her. What type of puzzles do you like to do? Is there a particular theme or
Oh,
what?
they have to be like, I love 1,000-piece puzzles. Like, they've got to be big and they've got to be not so complicated that, like, I'm never going to be the one that does the all white circle puzzle. Like, you can forget it. Like, there has to be a pattern and joy in the completion of like bringing a picture to life. But all that said, I do like one that's kind of that's a little bit complicated. Like I want a challenge. And so lately I found a I found a subscription that sends you like at least one puzzle a month. And that's been super fun because I'm like, I have room for no more puzzle boxes in my closet. And like I'm never gonna build it again. So like if I can put it together, ship it back, it's like the original Netflix of puzzles is basically what it is, which has been really fun. But
How
then
cool.
in the last, I don't know, 6 months, I've become obsessed with Legos, which to me is just a different kind of puzzle.
It is. So tell me more about that. Do you buy just like Legos and then you create your own thing, or
Yeah,
do you buy
no,
the
I mean,
ones that
we're a family of movie nerds. And so it's usually things like a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Movie nerds and we love to travel. So lately it's been the Pyramid of Giza, the Roman Colosseum, a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, the DeLorean from Back to the Future. And my husband built me some shelves in this small room we have downstairs. I don't know what it's going to be. The room's going to be used for. We've been remodeling and it used to be an exercise room, but he's put these shelves up for me so that I can like put all my Legos on display. So my ultimate dream since I was 17 was to own my own boutique hotel or bed and breakfast. Like that has been the ultimate dream for as long as I can remember. And so for my birthday, he took me to we have a brand new Lego store. So he took me to the Lego store in Barnes and Noble. That was my surprise birthday date to go buy anything I wanted. And it was so much fun just to walk through the Lego store. But I found out they have a boutique hotel and they were out of it. So then we went to Barnes and Noble and I found the boutique hotel. And so I was like, that's the Lego set. Like I get to build the ultimate puzzle of 3,000 pieces and it can sit and remind me of my dream every day. I'm like, what's more perfect than that? And then we went to
well,
Barnes and Noble and I bought stickers. I bought sticker books. And I'm like, I'm a 55-year-old woman who feels 10 years old all over again because I bought stickers and Legos just like when I was 10.
what I love though, is so first of all, I think that we all should embrace our inner child. So I love that on so many levels. But one of the other things that I love is sort of this metaphorical parallel, right? So you love Legos because of fitting things together. You love puzzles because of fitting
Mhm.
things together. And really the meal plan, this kitchen witch, and Tricia's Bites of Life all are also a puzzle of fitting things together. And so really it sort of feels completely full circle. It's just
Yeah, it
when
is.
you get
I have
born,
a
when you say
gift
you
for
do.
seeing patterns, and this could be the ADHD brain, but I have a gift for seeing patterns and gaps and how things fit together in process. I'm not a great I was having a conversation with somebody at work about this morning. I was like, you can cast the vision for me and I can help you figure out the steps of the process. And then I step out. I'm not going to be the one to implement it. I can guide you along the experiment process. I'm not going to be, I'm not the done for you. Like, let me crank out all the details. Like, I know where I just came up with another answer for your question about like the most surprising thing I
Yeah.
think was discovering my gifts, in my late 40s, early 50s. I
Yeah.
think that's another one, right? Discovering and remembering, right? Because really is bringing all those things I love from my childhood to fruition now and just got conditioned somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I love it so much. I love everything about having had you here today and everything that you're doing to help make lives easier by taking some of the guesswork out of the meal side of things.
Yeah, it should be
So,
fun.
yeah, really fun and a great way to sort of like bring back the connection, with all the screen time. I think getting around a table should be some goals because without our devices. So, Tricia, if people heard things today and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I need to get access to the My Kitchen Witch," through Tricia's Bites of Life,
Mhm.
what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, triciasbitesoflife.com, or you can reach out to me directly. My email is hello@triciasbitesoflife.com. Very simple. And I would love to hear from you. It's back to school time. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on with their kids at school. Bring them around the table, even if it's only one day a week. And instead of asking how your day was, I want you to ask them what's one thing they wish someone had said to them today.
Oh. That's beautiful.
It gets them thinking differently. Nobody wants to talk about school any more than you want to talk about work. So shift the conversation at the table. Ask them something. What was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? So many ways to find out what's going on underneath versus that,
Mm,
what did you learn today in school? Because they may not
mm.
realize they did. But what's one thing you wish somebody had asked you today?
I
It'll
love
tell you
that.
so much.
I hope everyone puts that tip into action because that's really beautiful. And Tricia, one last question, and I ask every single person on my podcast this question, which is, what is one word or a short phrase that you would give to another woman that's looking to start or build her business?
Hmm. It seems so cliche, but I have to remind myself on the regular, do it scared.
Hmm. Yeah,
Do it scared, do it messy. Just do it.
yeah, I love it. I think that's really good advice. Well, Tricia, thank you so much for being my guest here today. Thank you to our listeners who have joined us here on the Spark Starter podcast. It's been my pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Godey, and on behalf of all the awe-inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.